Hi crafters, it's Kathy from Scrap and Bean coming to you today, bringing some coloring. Let's bring some black and white paper to life here. So I'm going to start with some Copics. My idea behind this was just to kind of give you a little watch on how the Copics work. I love the alcohol-based Copics for the blending, and we do give classes on the different blending techniques with those. But then I'm going to finish it up with some pencils because I also love my Polychromo pencils. And this past Saturday, we had an art journal class, and one of the focal point on our art journal was flowers that we colored with pencils. And so I was giving out some tips of coloring with pencils in that class, and I thought I would share that on a video as well. So I'll just get some basic coloring down, and then we'll get into the pencils, and I'll give you some tips. And then once you have your cameras straight, once I've got my Copics down on there and some shading, I can actually go in with my pencils. I don't think I would generally do it on this stamp because the petals are quite large and easy enough to go in with a Copics. But you can use the same technique if you're going into very small areas that you might find your markers are a little too small to go into, and where the point of a nice sharp pencil might go in a little bit better. So you can actually layer these pencils right on top of your Copics, and you can see where that changes things up a little bit. So I'll just do this one flower, but you can see if you compare this one to any of the others, it's got a little bit more of this color in the center, this one here, and you can even go darker if you want, but it just gives you some more options for your coloring. Now if you were going to do it with just pencils, here's some of my tips with the pencils. What do I have here stamped? Not much actually. But I have something here with the leaves stamped. So if I can do that with, I'll just show you, I think quickly, how I would shade that. So here's two colors. Maybe even a brighter one. Okay, well, we'll try that. It's maybe not the best color combination, but that's what we'll work with right now. So I'm just going to take one of my pencils and color in. First I need to sharpen it. So I'm just putting a really light layer of color down first. This is not necessarily the way that it needs to be done. There's no rule. This is just how I do it. Just sharing with you how I do it. I'm putting down a really light layer of color. And what I do find is that when we're coloring, because we hold a pencil in our hand just like an ink pen, we tend to use the same pressure as an ink pen as well. And when I'm doing that first layer and even my second layer, I really don't put much pressure on it at all. So I find to remind myself not to put much pressure is I hold it differently. And if you find that, you know, if you're holding your pencil and it's still, you're doing quite a bit of pressure, then hold it farther back. This is a short pencil, but because I've used it lots. But on something like this, where it's closer to a full length. So if I hold it way back here, I have less control. I tend to put less pressure. You hold it up here, you can put a lot of pressure right on that tip. But if you hold it back here, it's really difficult to add pressure. So, you know, I maybe wouldn't hold it right back here because you also will have less control of coloring within the lines. But find yourself a spot where you can hold it back far enough that it stops you from putting that pressure on your pencil. And really what I'm doing is just barely, I would say, tickling the paper with the pencil. I'm just barely getting some color down there. And what I find with, or at least the way that I blend my colored pencils, is by layering them. Now if you put a lot of pressure on your first layer, you're just not going to get a good blend. The paper's only going to hold so much lead. So there's a little bit on there. I will try to zoom back in so hopefully you can see. It's a very light color, but it's there. And then I'm going to go in with one of my darker pencils, maybe do towards the center of the leaf, if that's where I'd have it darker. And I'm still holding it quite a ways back because I just want a light layer of pencil on there. So I'm just kind of at this point marking out where my different color is going to go. So I'm going to have it darker in the center there so that it looks like the leaf kind of dips down in the middle. So it's farther away from the light, more into the shadows. And then I'm going to take my medium color because I'm using 3 different colors of green, so I'm just going to refer to them as my light, medium, and dark. And this one I'm kind of going over all the other colors, but again, I'm keeping it very, very light. So there I've got at least one layer everywhere. And now I'm going to go in and do my second layer. And it really doesn't matter which color I put down first for a second layer. I'm just going to go in with the darkest one I'm using, which happens to be Olive Green Yellow Wish, which is number 173. And I'm going to put it down now with a little bit of pressure, maybe the way I would use a normal pencil, I guess. So now this is my second layer of this darker color, and you can see where it is getting substantially darker. The darkness is showing up now. And I'm also doing the pencil strokes kind of in the direction that the veins of the leaf would grow. And then I'll take my next color and do the same thing. Kind of overlapping, and I'm putting a little bit more pressure, but not a lot. And I'm going over the edges of the dark. So it's overlapping. Now where that dark is, parts of it are going to be on the third layer already. And I do find if I sharpen it nice, like look at the points on my pencils, I do like to keep them nice and Nice and sharp. So now I'm going out in that lightest area. And I am putting a little bit more pressure. So, I mean, you could hold it up closer. The reason I'm holding it back a little bit farther is because I think up here my hand might be blocking you from actually seeing what I'm doing. Maybe not. And then on this other side as well. And you will notice when you hold the pencil close to the tip like this, at least for me, I start just automatically putting more pressure on that pencil, even without thinking of it. It's just automatically how I end up doing it. So now I have at least 2 layers. In some areas, I'll even have 3. So now I'm just going to go in and think, what do I want more of? Do I want more of the dark, more of the medium, or more of the lighter color? And then just add another layer. And now I'm actually putting a reasonable amount of pressure on there. You might even call this burnishing. So when you're really kind of pressing in there, and once you get to this stage where you are burnishing or where you're putting a fair amount of pressure down, you're almost done, because your paper, when you're burnishing or pressing like this with a pencil, your paper starts to lose its tooth, which just means if any little texture to the paper gets pressed down and you don't really, there's just nothing left to grab the pencil lead once you've got it pressed down. So then you can't add any more color to it. So this is why, to blend, I lay it down in very thin layers so that you have that opportunity before it gets to the burnishing stage that you can add and blend your colors with some control over how much you can put on there. So I'll put a little bit more of this dark color in the center there, and you can see how that does darken it up. So on this side of the leaf, quite a bit darker than this other side. This one here is darker. At least in person I can see it, in the camera not quite so much. That's about as close as I can get. But you can see where this side is quite a bit darker now than that side. And that's because I've put more pressure on this last layer that's going down. So I'm just going to turn it so I can access this. And then this will be my last layer going down on this side, because I'm pressing and it's kind of compressing those fibers in the paper. And they're just not going to accept much more lead, pencil lead, after I've pressed them that way. So that's getting down to my last layer. And this is the reason why you don't start by putting a lot of pressure down, because then you can't add much more lead on top of that pressure. So there you go. So maybe if I can even, I'm going to take this darker color just to demonstrate how hard it is to, or that your paper does have a limit of how much lead it'll take down. So here where I have lighter color, let's just see. I'll put a little bit more light on there. And I can tell from the feel of it, it's just not taking any more lead. My pencil's just floating across the top. But I'll show you with a contrasty, like with a darker color here, trying to put it down. It takes a little bit, but it's just not adding much more color. Where you know, on something here where I have no lead down, look at all the color I can put down. I can press on there and just get a lot of color down there. But once you have lots of lead down, less and less of your lead is actually going to cling to the paper. So I hope this encourages you to get out your coloring mediums, your Copics, your markers, whatever you like to use, and even your colored pencils. These happen to be the Polychromo ones by Faber-Castell, and we do sell them in loose so that you can buy just the colors that you want. So you can even just get a couple and try them. Also, if you have favorites that you use all the time, like obvious which one here I use the most is getting a little stubby. So once I've used it up, I know I can just replace that one color. I don't have to purchase a whole set. So that's a nice reason to have open stock. And I'm just going to spend my evening adding a little more detail onto these flowers. And my wish for you tonight is just like this stamp says, may flowers always line your path and sunshine light your day.